So people always ask, if you can go back and change one thing in your life, what would it be?
It's like watching the middle part of a movie and going, what would I go back to the first part of the movie and tell this actor what they should have done in the first scene?
I really am pretty happy with everything I've done over the last decade.
I wish that I could have sat down with the 22-year-old kid and said, now look, perseverance is what gets the glory.
I like the Lamarr that exists today. I'm not sure I would like another version. This is who I am. This is who I deal with. I'm happy with the outcome.
I wouldn't really change much. I wish I'd lost the weight sooner.
I would probably encourage myself to be a little bit more relational and seek out friendships over trophies.
Otherwise, yeah, I'm super happy with everything I've done.
What about you? Would you change anything in your past?
Wow. Well, it's a joy to be back with you. If you're visiting this morning, welcome. We hope you had a great experience so far, and we'll continue to. For those of you that are watching or listening online for the first time, welcome. My name's Scott. I'm the lead pastor here. And for the last 10 days, I've been with our youth pastor, Tyler, in Kenya, Africa. So I missed the whole ice storm and all that good stuff, but brought it back with a vengeance today. So good for me. But it's great to be back. We had an amazing experience. We talked a little bit about it before we left, but we connected with Encouragement Incorporated, which is a U.S.-based organization that's present in Kenya, and they're doing amazing work there. And so we spent 10 days with the founder. His name is Vic Rader, and we just spent some time really observing and kind of discussing what would it look like if we were to partner with them in the ministry that's going on there. What would it look like? What could we do? How could we help? How could we get engaged with that work? And so we had a phenomenal time. Thank you for praying for us. We made it back safely. That was a bit of a gong show, but it's good to be back. I only got the flu, so no big deal. We're just here and we're back in the saddle. In those 10 days, though, I will admit, we had a bit of a culture shock, which is to be expected, right? I don't think you could go halfway across the world and not have a little bit of that. But for us, it started like immediately. Day one, culture shock. They dropped us in the first day. Vic hopped us in the mini wagon, and we went down to the local market. So here's a picture of us at market day, walking around with thousands of people in what we would consider a dump. But to them, this is like Bayshore Mall. They were doing all their shopping, getting all their things, and Tyler and I were walking around going, what in the world are we doing here? Like, we don't belong. This is just, it's mind-boggling, just immediately this overwhelming sense of this is another world. We're in a completely different world. And it's a world, to be quite honest with you, I'm a little high maintenance, I'll admit it, but it's a little bit of a world where I was walking around, there's no Starbucks. It's market day. There's not a Starbucks on any corner. What's going on here? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think I could live like this. And I felt guilty saying that, but I'm just being honest. That was the admission in my heart, was I couldn't live like this. And to be honest with you, I didn't think we were going to live very long. Especially as we were driving around, because if you drive around the streets of downtown, in Kenya, it's a gong show. Like, here's a picture, and this really doesn't do it justice, but there are cars, trucks, vans, people, animals, motorcycles, bicycles coming from everywhere and going in every direction. There are no laws, if you will, when it comes to driving here. It's just mass chaos. Everybody's blowing their horn. It was crazy. I was holding the oh my goodness handle on the side of the door for the first 2 days straight, and you might call it another kind of handle. I call it the oh my goodness handle, and I'm just shaking it for all it's worth, thinking like, this is crazy. What are we doing here? And then it wasn't until we got onto the outskirts of town, we were driving into town one day, that I saw something that I was like, this is how you drive in Kenya. And here's this picture. You bring your own casket. When you're going to town, you just come prepared. And that's what it was like. We were driving around thinking, I'm going to die on these streets. It's just crazy. And so the food was unique. I'll give it that. And many of you had asked, what was the food like? What did you eat? And some things, there were some different things there. But what I was really thankful for was there was some North American presence in Kenya. They had a Kentucky Fried Chicken, which we didn't go there because I don't know if it's really chicken. But the other thing that was really cool was this picture here. Uber Eats is present in Kenya. So this is just like, somebody was delivering a goat, and that was cool. So there was lots of fun. Another thing we did, we really wanted to immerse ourselves in the culture a little bit. Like, we wanted to feel like we were a part of things. So we took Tyler to a group of the Maasai people, and he got engaged in the ritual, mating ritual here. So there was, no, I'm just kidding. It wasn't really that. Sorry, Vanessa, if you're watching. This is Yeah, but this is Tyler engaging in a warrior ritual, and they determine their best warriors by how high they can jump, and white men can jump. Tyler did a great job, so good stuff there. We left, some of the people, and then we drove around, the different parts of Kenya, and some of the things that jumped out at me, number one was, it was much more green and lush than I expected. For some reason, I don't know, in my naivete, I was thinking everything was going to be brown and sandy and dusty and everything, but there was just so much green everywhere and rolling valleys. It was unbelievable. But one thing that really took me off guard as we were making all these, drives to different villages and to meet different people that encouragement was connected with was the homes. Like home after home as you drive by look just like this. Homes that we would consider abandoned homes, or you know what I mean? Like nobody would live like this. But these are just mud huts with tin roofs, and they're everywhere. And there are kids running to them and running from them. And I'm thinking, man, I'm in another world. Like this would be a condemned building in Canada, and there's a family, multiple families, living in these homes. I'm in another world. I don't think I could live like that. And again, one of the things that was just really profound to me, and it wasn't so much, the food, and it wasn't the noise, the smell, and it wasn't even the type of homes that people lived in. I was overwhelmed with how many children were just running free without anybody to guide them. I mean, we'd be driving down the road, and there would be little kids carrying littler kids on the busy streets in the rural areas with no supervision, just running wild and free. And I thought to myself as we would drive, I would think, where are they running from? Or what are they running to? Or what do they have ahead of them? What is their hope? What does their future hold for them? It was incredibly, incredibly humbling and overwhelming. And one of the things that Vic does, and it was really cool to be a part of it, he brings from where he lives in Colorado, he goes to Sam's Club or Costco, I don't know which one he goes to there, but he would bring these big bags of Tootsie Rolls. And from Costco, and he leaves them in the front of the car, and as he's driving, when we would see kids walking, down the side of the road, they would see us, and it was obviously, for them, it must have been the circus had come to town, because there's a bunch of white people in one car, and Vic told us, for some of those kids, we would be the first white people they've probably ever seen, and they call us Mzungus, okay, so that's Swahili for white person or whatever, and so they would see us, and they would kind of come to the car, and Vic would reach his hand into the bag of candy and go, sweet, sweet, and he'd throw some candies to them. And we got to do that. And it was such a simple yet profound thing to see the eyes of these children light up as you handed them some candy. It was just incredible. And there were so many kids, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids that we came across day after day. And I just thought, what's in store for them? What's their hope? What's their future? These are some kids here that we came across the side of the road. And at the first, this picture is after we gave them the candy as they came to the car. But when we first stopped by, they were looking at us like, whoa. Again, a circus comes down. There's a whole crew of us, right? Just weird looking. This girl in particular really caught my eye. She's like, I don't know about you, but I want that candy, right? Like this little girl right here. That was kind of neat. So we handed her some candy. And then we continued on. One of the fun things with the Tootsie Rolls, too, was one of the really fun things was I got to come across some monkeys. Many of you know that monkeys is one of my favorite animals. And so I had the Tootsie Rolls, and so I fed them, too. And so this guy came right up to the car, and there was others, too. And Tyler has some really cool video. This one in particular got up on his hind legs and was like, give me that candy. And it was really awesome, and fed him. And we stayed at Encouragement Incorporated's children's home. This is a hotel that they purchased in 2003 and renovated into a children's home / orphanage. And they've hosted many kids over the years since they purchased this building. And we had the fortunate opportunity to stay there. Great facility. And we spent some time with the children. They were in school, so we didn't get to spend as much time with them as we would have wanted to. For some reason, they didn't let them skip. But one of the things that we did in the evening time was Bridge Kids hosted a movie night. And we talked about that a little bit before we left. But Bridge Kids, the kids brought in some money, and they were able to purchase some popcorn and licorice and some ring pops and all that kind of good stuff. Here's some of the kids trying to figure out how to work the ring pop. That was really cute and innocent. They were trying to figure it, helping each other out. And we got them some glow sticks. And so after the movie was over, they turned out the lights, and the kids are all swinging these glow sticks around and hooping and hollering and having a great time. And I just sat back and thought, oh, the things that I take for granted. Oh, the things I take for granted. It was just a powerful thing. And one of the best parts about the evening that we had with the kids is after the movie was over, after all the fun was over, we kind of stood at the doorway, and as each child left to go back to their bed to go to sleep, we hugged each one of them and told them we loved them. And I'm telling you, man, with every child hugs you like that time after time after time, it's like a piece of your heart just gets warmer and warmer and warmer. And Vic prayed for the children before they left, and he thanked God for the family, because they are a family. These children who have been abandoned, some of them are grieving the fact that their parents have died. These children have become a family together, and to spend this time that we had with them was just an incredible, incredible honor. We went to church on Sunday because that's what you do, right? I know you guys had a little bit of a tough time coming to church the Sunday that we were gone, but we had a hot one when we were down in Kenya, and so we went to church. I wanted to go to this one, mainly because, as someone who wants to reach people who are far from God, this is brilliant. They planted a church right next to Outlaw's guest house, so it's kind of like you plant a church right where the pagans are, and they come out, and I don't know. We didn't get to go there, but we went to another church, and it was out in a rural setting, and we walked in, and I'm telling you, they treated us like we were celebrities, dignitaries, honored guests. I mean, I've never been treated as well as I was treated in that moment. It was a little bit embarrassing, to be quite honest with you. We really felt like we don't deserve this. Do you know who we are, really? Like, this isn't really, appropriate. But they really did. They made us feel so welcome, and it was such a humbling thing to be in this church. There were no instruments, maybe 100 people, 150 people, and every single one of them was engaged in this service. Not one person was standing silent. Like, the music is playing and they're kind of taking it in. No, every single person, whether they were seated or standing, was engaged in the music. We didn't know the words to the song, never heard the songs before, but I really wanted to learn them quickly because I just felt compelled to engage in this beautiful, passionate praise and worship towards God. It was so amazing. Tyler looked over at me a couple times and we were like, this is amazing. Like, this is crazy. We're in another world. Yeah, we're in another world. This is unbelievable. It was so cool. They did church for 3 hours. Okay? So just do the math on that, all right? For 3 hours, and it felt like 15 minutes. It was so full of passion, and God was so honored, and it was so touching to be a part of it. One of the things that was really cool, and Tyler knew right away that this was impacting me, was, maybe middle way through the service, a young couple came to the front, and they wanted to thank the church because the church had prayed for their pregnancy. They had been pregnant and were having all manner of difficulties during the pregnancy and really struggling. And I didn't understand everything that was being said. They did have a translator, but I was kind of in the moment. And they basically said, they thought at some point surgery was going to be required, and I don't know what access they would have to those kind of things down there. And so there was a lot of fear surrounding this pregnancy. And so this couple came to the church and begged them to pray with them, and they did just that. And then we sat there, and many of you know a little bit of Lisa and I's journey, and that just instantly connected with me, and I felt connected to them. And so then they brought up this little child, and she was all bundled up. I had to get really close in order to get this picture. I just wanted to see her face, And so I got up to her, and her name, get this, her name is Prayer, because the church prayed for this miracle, and they named her Prayer. It was interesting. The pastor said, we're going to pray for prayer right now. It was kind of this weird moment, but they did, and it was just so cool. It was so sweet and so precious to see this little one. And again, I thought, in this environment where so many kids are left on the side of the road to fend for themselves, here's a community of people committed to this little girl. And it was so incredibly, incredibly powerful. It was humbling to be a part of it. And so many of the moments on this trip were humbling. I could go on for 3 hours. You guys in? No, I'm just kidding. So but truly, you can't go, and if you've ever been on this kind of experience, you know this. You come back and you're just so overwhelmed, and there's so many different things to process and think through. But one of the things that was most humbling and most powerful for me, again, in this whole experience was one of the evenings we were there, we went out into a rural area, and we did they call it a Jesus film team. So what they do is they have a number of people scattered all throughout Kenya who have teams of people that go into these villages, and they show the Jesus film, which is a movie that was, I don't know, was maybe in the late late 80s, I think, maybe Bill Bright's ministry put that together, and this has been translated into numerous languages, so it's been shown all over the world, and there have been millions of people that have seen this, probably almost as many as have been to McDonald's, and they've seen this movie, and this is translated into Swahili. So I'm watching this movie underneath the stars in Kenya, Africa, with a group of people I've never met, don't speak their language, and yet in this moment I'm so connected to them because as I watch this screen, I know what it's saying. It's based on Luke, the book of Luke, and the gospel, and it's portraying this. And as I'm watching this, the whole time I've been in Africa so far, I'm thinking I'm in another world. And then in this moment, I see Jesus being crucified. I see this scene that you see right here where there's hundreds of people watching this scene, watching Jesus speak in their language. And in that moment, I'm reminded I am in a different world. I'm in a different world, a world that God so loved that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever would believe in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. Not my world, not their world, the world. And I was reminded that we have an incredible responsibility to the world that God so loved to spread the name, the hope, the confidence that can be found in a relationship with Jesus Christ. And we, you and I, get to be a part of that. What an incredible experience. Thank you for allowing Tyler and I the opportunity to represent the bridge in Kenya. We had an amazing, amazing experience. The last picture I want to show you is this one right here. This is Tyler and I at the end of our trip. We had the opportunity to go on a safari excursion in a place called Masai Mara. This is us, basking in God's creation, and Tyler posing like he's in a cologne ad or something. I don't really know what he's doing there, but nevertheless, we had this amazing experience, and you look at this picture, and I know what you're thinking as you look at that. You're thinking like, wow, that must have been a lot of fun. You guys must have had a great time, and you think that because you see this picture, but what you don't see is what happened before this picture was taken. You see, we woke up the day before, and we set out for what was supposed to be a 7-hour drive. At least that's what Google said. So we get on the road, 3-4 hours, and we come to that pivotal fork in the road, if you will. We can go right, as Google says, or, you see, there was a disagreement in the car, disagreement between the Google in the sky and the Kenyans in the car. And Google said, go right. The Kenyans said, go left. Because if you go left, as they put it, there was, what was it they called it, Tyler? A shortcut. If you go left, there's a shortcut. Now, I usually like shortcuts, but Google says go right. So we were at this impasse. What are we going to do? We went left. And we went left. We drove, another hour or so until we came to said shortcut. And then we made another turn and ended up on a 27-kilometer road that could only be described as moon rock. Okay, this was the most uneven terrain known to man. We drove in a little vehicle with 4 donuts for tires at an average speed of about 5 kilometers an hour. Do the math. So we were kind of figuring, okay, this is bad. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention this. It started raining. So not only are we on this unbelievable off-road terrain in this little cart with 4 wheels, but it's raining, it's muddy, we're sliding, we're bouncing, we're doing all this stuff. Motion sickness was in full effect. Vic is on the phone, and he's trying to get a hold of the Safari Club to see if they'll meet us on the other side of this shortcut. But we can't get a hold of them. And we're driving along, and Vic leans over to me, and he says, Scott, I'm a little worried. Now, Vic's worried, I'm worried, okay? He's been here 40 times, okay? If he's concerned, I'm concerned. I'm thinking, what? He says, look, and if we can't get a hold of these guys, if we make it to the other side of this road, we're certainly not going to get to the safari because the road to get there is even worse than this road here. If we don't get a hold of them, we may be stuck in this van for the night. I'm thinking, this is how it's going to end. 2 Canadian pastors eating on the side of a safari road. Like, this isn't going to go well. I'm like, I don't have to outrun everybody, just outrun Tyler, right? Like, this isn't going to go well. So thankfully, we kept driving, and as you probably figured it out because of the picture here, we eventually got a phone call. It was the Safari Club. They agreed to meet us on the other side of the shortcut. We all celebrated when we got off Neptune's Rock and pulled into the gas station where we met the safari driver, and we exchanged vehicles. We hopped in the vehicle with him. We started taking off. Everything was great. Everybody was laughing, carrying on, having a good time like nothing happened until that safari truck started to slow down and pull over to the side of the road and stop. Now, words were spoken in Swahili, but I didn't need a translator. I knew exactly what was being said. I've heard these words before. And the driver got out of the truck, he went to the back, and sure enough, we had a flat tire. Not on the 4 donuts that we drove on to get this far. Oh, no. On the safari truck that's supposed to be impenetrable. No, that's where we get the flat tire. They changed the flat tire. We drive another 45 minutes on the most awful road known to me. Tyler hit his head on the ceiling 6 times. He's a bit concussed still. It was just unbelievable, but finally, what was supposed to be 7 hours took over 12, but finally, we got there, safe and safari. And the moral of that story is, listen to Google. So we get there, and we had this unbelievable experience. And again, you know this because you see the picture, and you're like, oh, it all worked out. Everything looks like you had a great time. You had an awesome trip. Everything worked out well. That's great. That's wonderful. Because stories are easier to endure when you know how they end, right? Stories are easier to endure when you know how they end. They just are. They just are. Stories. Now, have you ever had that moment where someone's telling you a story and you want to know how it ends before they give you all the details, right? You want to know how it ends before you get the details. It's like somebody's telling you a story and they're giving you the director's cut. They're giving you all the deleted scenes. You come home and your wife says, I had a terrible day. And you're like, oh man, I just need to know how this ends, right? Like what is it going to cost? What do we have to fix? What do we have to do? Do we both have to go to the school? What's going to happen? Like all this other stuff. And you ask her and she starts talking about what she had for breakfast. And you're like, come on. I just want to know how it ends, because stories are easier to endure when you know how they end. When you know how they end, I can follow you on all the rabbit trails and I can get into all the minutia and all the details as long as I know that in the end, it all worked out. Everything's going to be okay. Everybody's fine. If I know all that, stories are easier to endure when you know how they end. And you have the leisure of laughter, as I kind of shared that, over-exaggerated story, kind of our experience, right? Because you saw the picture and you know that it all worked out. You know that we probably had a great time. Some of you wish you could have been a part of it, at least the safari part of it, right? You get that. Because stories are easier to endure when you know how they end. But what if? What if? What if we hadn't made it? What if we hadn't made it? What if you never regained control of the car when you started hydroplaning on the ice? Or what if the cops pulled you over that time in college, right? Let's be honest, right? It's not that some of us haven't done anything wrong. It's just most of us never got caught, right? I mean, right? You can polish your halo if you want, but I know for me, and for some of us in the room, if we're honest, right? The question, what if, can be incredibly, incredibly sobering. It's incredibly sobering. What if? What if? What if you'd got caught? What if you'd said yes? What if you'd said no? What if you hadn't gone home with him? What if she saw your search history? What if you hadn't stepped out in faith? Or better yet, what if you had stepped out in faith? What if you had started? What if you'd stopped? What if? You see, I think one of the reasons we don't experience the change we want to experience in our lives is because we don't allow the question, what if, to sober us long enough that we could really evaluate some of the things that are going on in and with us. And the moment it gets too close, the moment we start to feel it in our chest, man, we switch gears as fast as we can and we start thinking about something else, or we run to something else, or we run to someone else. We miss it. We miss it. And sometimes knowing how a story ends causes us to miss how the story was written. Sometimes knowing how a story ends causes us to miss how the story was written. And how the story was written puts what was written in perspective. And it's what allows what was written in someone else's story to be applied in our own story. And so what I want to do throughout this series is I want to simply ask the question, what if? From a story that most of us, if not all of us, have heard of to one degree or another. I want to show you a verse, a very famous verse. Most of you probably know this, but here's what it is. It says, so David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. Now, many of you saw this verse, or if I were to tell you from the beginning, hey, throughout this series, we're going to talk about David and Goliath, most of you would be like, oh man, again? I've heard this story. I remember the flannel graph. I went to kids camp. I've heard this. I've probably heard 100 sermons on this story. Like, seriously, of all the stories in the Bible, is this the one you're going to pick? Like, I know this one, right? I know the story about David and Goliath goes down every time you read it, and there was a slingshot and 5 smooth stones, but David only needed 1, and the Philistine was out there, and he was talking smack about the Israelites and about their God, and Jesse sends David down with a bunch of bread for his brothers, and he hears, Goliath talking smack, and he says, you don't want no smoke, and then he takes a slingshot, and he hits him in the forehead, and I know this story, right? And so since you know this story, and you know it so well, let me just suggest something really simple. David never read 1 Samuel 17:50. David never read 1 Samuel 17:50. He never read it. See, it's easier when you know how the story ends, right? It's easier when you know how the story ends. But even though we know Goliath goes down in David's story, there are many of us this morning who are wondering, what if? We're wondering, what if? We're uncertain. Is it how this is going to end? We don't know how this is going to. See, we sigh when we hear, we're going to talk about David and Goliath. We sigh, but David was shaking. David was shaking in his sandals, trembling with a sling in his hand, wondering, is this how this is going to end? Like I wondered in the car, is this how it's going to end? Like maybe you're wondering in the midst of your situation, is this how it's going to end? Is this how my marriage is going to end? Is this how my career is going to end? Is this how the dream ends? Is this how my faith ends? And even though we know Goliath goes down in David's story, there are many of us that need to know how that all works out because we're still standing in front of a giant that's bigger than we are, right? And again, it's easier when you know how the story ends. And so what I want to do is, even though we know what happens in David's story, I want to simply ask the question, what if? What if it didn't end the way we know? I mean, think about it. What if David had made some different decisions along the way? Right? What if he had made some different decisions along the way? This story wouldn't be the story that we know. It wouldn't have ended the way that we know that it ended. And so for the next 3 weeks, I just want to simply look at this story and ask the question, what if? And even though you've heard 100 sermons about how David defeated Goliath, there are 3 things that David faced before he ever got in front of Goliath. And so through this series, I want to simply ask the question, what if any one of those 3 things had gone differently? See, if they had, the story wouldn't be the story that you know. And so we're going to pick up the story. You know there's a big giant. He's over 9 feet tall, and he's mean and ugly, and he's defying the Israelites, defying their God. He's standing on the battlefield, waiting for a representative of the Israelites to meet him on the battlefield, and we pick it up in chapter 17. It says, now David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time, he was very old. Keep going. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to the war. The firstborn was Eliab, the second Abinadab, and the third Shammah. Great names. David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep in Bethlehem. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and every evening and took his stand. Now, this is where it gets good. Jesse said to his son David, take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of the unit, see how your brothers are, and bring back some assurance from them. He goes on, there was Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah fighting against the Philistines. So Jesse comes to his son, he gives him a task, and what if David had been a typical teenager? What if? I mean, David was probably 17 years old when he killed Goliath, and what if he had had what some would consider to be a typical teenage response in this moment? His dad says, hey, I want you to take these snacks down to your brother, and what if David said, oh man, come on, I'm going out with my dudes today, I don't want to, oh, really? Is there someone else that can do this? Like, come on, do you not, or maybe he was like, do you not know who I am, Dad? I'm the future king. Right? Now, if you read earlier, Samuel the prophet had anointed David to be the future king of Israel. What if that had gone to his head? And he's like, man, do you not know who I am? What if David, keep going, next one. What if David refused to be faithful in his present because he got focused on his future? What if? What if he let what was coming ahead of him to keep him from doing anything in the present? What if? What if he let it go to his head? What if Jesse said, David, look, I want you to get this bread. I want you to get this cheese. I want you to take it down to your brothers. Hey, can you find out how they're doing? Bring back some word. I'm their dad. I just want to make sure everybody's doing okay. And what if David had gotten up slowly, rolled his eyes, pulled out his cell phone and hopped on IG for a few minutes, the fake account, the one his parents don't know about, and he's kind of looking at it. What if maybe he texted his buddy or maybe even his girlfriend and said, man, this is ridiculous. My dad's crazy. Like, does he not know who he's talking to? Like, I'm not a maid. I'm not a servant. I don't do this stuff. I mean, I'm the future king. Like, you know me, girl. You know what I'm about to do. You know who I'm about to be. You know you want to be part of this and this whole. Like, what if? What if he'd had that typical teenage response? The story wouldn't be the story that you know, right? I mean, what if he had just let it go to his head? What if he had just gotten off track completely? What if he just responded like a typical teenager and kind of threw it to the wind? Someone else will take care of it, or they don't really need it, or there's probably lots. What if he just kind of let it go? He never would have made it to the battlefield, and he never, ever would have stood in front of Goliath, right? What if? What if? See, I think sometimes we miss opportunities because we get so focused on what could be that we fail to be present and faithful in the moment. And see, opportunity presents itself as ordinary. Opportunity always presents itself as ordinary. And sometimes we get so wrapped up and so focused on the what ifs of the future that, if I do that, I got to kind of hustle and do all these other things. And we fail to be faithful in the moment. And we fail to see that opportunity presents itself as ordinary. And because of that, David didn't wake up that day knowing there was a giant on the battlefield. He didn't set off knowing he was going to stand in front of a giant, just like you don't know what day God wants to use you. You don't know in what conversation things are going to turn around. You don't know in what moment God will make a way where there seems to be no way. You just don't know. So what if? What if David had gone down and he had just kind of let it go to his head? And what if he went down with this bad attitude? What if he went down with a bad attitude? He took the food and he walked down. He's like, here, and he throws it down. He turns around and walks away. What if? What if David felt slighted because he was asked to do something that he deemed insignificant? What if? What if he'd gone down, oh man, what am I doing? I'm beyond this. I'm bigger than this. I'm better than this. I'm not this insignificant person. I'm the future king. This is not what I should be doing. What if? What if he went down there? I'm not skip the dishes, David. I'm the future king, David. Do you not know who I am? Google me. I'm the man. I'm going to be the king. I'm not bringing people food. I'm the one who people are going to bring food to. I'm the man. What if? The story wouldn't be the story that you know. What if? What if David tripped over the ordinary? What if David stayed stationary waiting for the significant? Or better yet, what if you trip over the ordinary? Or what if you stay stationary waiting for the significant? Opportunity presents itself as ordinary. Opportunity presents itself as ordinary. And your faithfulness in it and to it is what allows opportunity to present itself. See, David didn't wake up knowing there was a Goliath, a giant, that he was going to stand in front of, not that day. But what if he had failed to do the ordinary? He would have never accomplished the extraordinary. It wouldn't have happened, and it wouldn't be the story you know. See, I think every single one of us in every day of our lives comes face to face with the ordinary. And David, before he ever faced Goliath, had to face the ordinary, just like you and I, every day of our lives, have to face the ordinary. And that's the precursor to any greatness that God may have in store for us. And I think so many times we miss the opportunities that God has in front of us, that God has to reveal to us. We miss those opportunities because we fail to be present and faithful in the ordinary. It's what you do in the day-to-day, your faithfulness in it and to it, that allows opportunity to present itself to you. So my challenge to you in light of what we see in David's story is simply this. Be present, be mindful, be faithful, Be obedient. Be obedient in the ordinary as a means of allowing God to provide the extraordinary in your life. We're going to continue on in David's story next week. We're going to continue to unpack what David faced before he ever faced Goliath. But I want to pray for you this morning as each one of us lives out our day-to-day. In the midst of our world, the world that God so loved, that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever in this room believes in him would not perish but have everlasting life. And God's design and God's desire is that each one of us would live faithful, mindful, obedient lives in the day-to-day, in the ordinary, to be ambassadors of his name, no matter where we are and no matter what we're doing. To be like David was, not just focused on our future and all that we can do and all that we can be, but to be present and to be faithful in who we are and where God has placed us today.